Hey, Councilman Squilla, we are now live.
Thank you, Matt. Today, June 9th, we're doing callbacks for public testimony. My understanding is the state law currently requires that the following announcements be made at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of Council Committee are included in the public hearing notice that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. Now the hour has come to start the hearing. Mr. Stitt, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance, please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also say a few brief words of responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak. Mr. Stitt?
Councilmember Bass? Councilmember Brooks? Councilmember Dom?
Good morning, Matt, Council President and Deputy Whip, and colleagues in the public.
Morning. Councilmember Gaultier?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here today.
Councilmember Gilmore Richardson?
Good morning, Matt. Good morning, Council President and colleagues.
Councilmember Green?
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Stitt. Good morning, colleagues. Pleasure to be here for another day of budget testimony.
Morning. Councilmember Ginn?
Good morning, council colleagues. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the council staff.
Councilmember Heenan? Councilmember Johnson? Councilmember Jones? Councilmember O?
Good morning, Matt. Good morning, Chairman. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning. Councilmember O'Neill? Councilmember Parker?
Good morning, Chairman Squilla, colleagues, and Matt.
Good morning. Councilmember Keona Sanchez?
Good morning, good morning.
Good morning. Councilmember Squilla?
Good morning, present.
Councilmember Thomas?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Matt. Happy to be here.
Good morning. And Council President Clark? All right, Councilmember Squilla, that is the roll.
Thank you, Matt. Quorum of the committee is present, and the hearing is now called to order. Before we dive into what we're sure will be a very informative session, I'd like to say a few words about today's process, about the coronavirus pandemic that has changed the world, and it includes this council. We're not in the same room, and to be honest, this is a very difficult situation conducting business this way. So we have a job to do and a technology that our team has put together to install to let us make sure that our voices are heard and that the public can watch and participate. There's a new environment comes with some of the new limits, however, which I want to emphasize. Our budget schedule's more compressed than in the past years, and the massive damage to our economy caused by the COVID-19 requires that the administration throw out the original proposed budget and prepares a brand new one, which we didn't receive until earlier this month. So we have less time in these hearings than were used, but a lot less time, but we have to be mindful that out of respect for each other and the public, each of us needs to be as direct as possible in our questions and brief in our comments. We need to keep things moving along, as we need to start and we need to finish on time. Every day the lights go out and we lose our television feed as the mayor has a press conference that hasn't happened in the last couple of days, but we still want to be on time and succinct. There's a lot to cover, and I'd like to get started. Thank you. And Matt, I guess if you want to call the first witness.
We gotta read the
titles.
Read the bills, the titles of the bills first. So Top of the next page, Councilman. So this is the public hearing.
This is the public hearing, the committee of the whole regarding bills number 200-285, 200-286, 200-287, 200-288, 200-289, 200-290, 200-291, 200-292, and resolution numbers 200-307 and 200-331. Mr. Stitt, please read the titles of the bills and the resolutions.
Thank you. Bill number 200-285, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2021 through 2026 inclusive. Bill number 200-286, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal 2021 capital budget. Bill number 200-287, an ordinance adopting the operating budget for fiscal year 2021. Bill number 200-288, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1200 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Parking Tax by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 200-289, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1800 of the Philadelphia Code entitled School Tax Authorization by revising certain tax rates all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 200-290, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-2600 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Business Income and Receipts Taxes by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 200-291, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1500 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Wage and Net Profits Tax by revising certain tax rates under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 200-292, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1300 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Real Estate Taxes to eliminate the discount for early payment of real estate taxes, all under certain terms and conditions. Resolution number 200-307. Resolution providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia, covering fiscal years 21 through 2025, and incorporating proposed changes with respect to fiscal year 2020, which is to be submitted by the Mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority pursuant to the Intergovernmental Cooperation Agreement, authorized by an ordinance of this Council approved by the Mayor on January 3, 1992, Bill number 1563-A, by and between the City and the Authority. Resolution number 200-331, resolution approving the Director of Finance's Budget Stabilization Reserve Fund withdrawal certification for purposes of allowing utilization of $34,276,000 in a reserve fund for general fund purposes in connection with the FY2021 operating budget.
Today, we continue the public hearings of the Committee of the Whole and to consider the bills that the clerk and consider proposed operating capital spending measures and fiscal year 2021, a capital program and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal year 2021 through fiscal year 2026. Before we begin the hearing today, from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewed have no reasonable expectations of privacy. By continuing to be in the meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members' questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available on Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they will wish to be recognized in order to comply with the Sunshine Act. And the chat features must only be used for that purpose. Today we will hear testimony from the departments, probably not testimony, but questions for the callback for Commerce and for the Office of Children and Families and the Department of Human Services. Mr. Stitt, if there's no one want to testify, I think we'd like to get started. I don't think there's any additional testimony.
No, Commerce will be going first, Councilman.
Okay, Commerce is first, and I guess if you're connected and ready to proceed, any council members wish to have any questions pertaining to Commerce?
Councilman Squilla, I'm on the phone and I don't know how to type in the chat box on the phone, so I would like to be in queue.
Okay, well, why don't you go first, and then we'll take up the queue.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you, and I want to start by saying a special thank you to the Commerce Department for all that you have done during this global pandemic. In addition to that, while we've been dealing with the civil unrest in our society, I know for a firsthand, when we've called on you all relative to small businesses, you have helped. And I want to say a special thank you to each of you. Let me start by saying at the beginning of May, the storefront improvement program budget was effectively slashed, and in-store was cut by about a third. Now, this made a lot of sense a few weeks ago than it does today in light of what our small businesses, particularly the neighborhood small businesses, have endured. If we can't use general fund dollars for this, are there any other state funds or other funds available? In addition to that, I want to bring our attention to the need to fix up the neighborhood-based businesses that have been damaged. In addition to that, we need to work on changing the program rules so that they're much more flexible. So I want you to comment about that. But the next thing I want to make sure I get on the record is that I want to note that this is not just about funding. I don't care if we're talking about the new normal budget amendment that council recently passed or our overall budgetary priorities. How we distribute those funds are extremely important. And I want to hear the Commerce Department's perspective about a recommendation that we will be proffering in council, that we should use this opportunity to support reconstruction through apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs that specifically train and invest in workers, particularly focusing on people of color, to go into the very neighborhoods to help small businesses fix their buildings, but that the people in the neighborhoods who are doing the work should look like the people in those neighborhoods. The old way of doing things is over. So again, I want you to comment about the storefront improvement plan, the in-store program, about my recommendation regarding program rules so that they're much more flexible. And then I want to hear your perspective about using pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs to work with CTE students and other people, Black and brown in particular, to be a part of going to reconstruct businesses in our neighborhoods.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, very good.
Great. All right. Thank you. Good morning, Councilwoman and members of City Council. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here today. So in terms of the storefronts, the businesses that were damaged over due to the unrest, we actually are using, as I think you probably remember from the last time I testified, that there's $3 million that we had received as part of a $10 million allocation for the Quality Jobs Program that we were going to apply towards fiscal year 21 for COVID-related business relief. What we are doing now is taking a portion of those dollars, which are less restricted than the storefront improvement dollars, and actually than the in-store dollars, I should say, than the CDBG dollars. And we are going to be doing an emergency grant program in the near future. So what we're doing right now, we actually just yesterday sent out a survey to the CDCs so that they can help inform us about the number of businesses that were damaged, the extent of the damage, information about whether or not they have insurance and what they know in terms of how much the insurance might cover, and just to get a better sense of the amount that we need and the amount of damage. And then we intend to have a very simple application process in the near future so that businesses, this would be for businesses in disadvantaged communities, not for downtown, can apply to put that towards repairing repairing their facade, their interior, deductibles, things like that. So definitely agree about flexible rules and having it be as simple as possible. We certainly learned that when we did the Small Business Relief Fund. In terms of the workforce and using minority businesses and labor from the communities, I think that's a great idea. I think what we could probably do is have what we've done already is provide names of minority businesses from our registry, from the OEO registry, to businesses that have been impacted. So when they were looking to board up, we provided names of businesses from the registry. But I think that we could certainly figure out some way to refer the businesses to, minority contractors and potentially programs like that, CTE. So I think that's a great idea. Did I answer all the questions?
Yes, you did, Sylvie. And again, listen, when we do things wrong, we're the first that you'll hear us noted. But when we start to get something right and we do it right, I think that should be recognized as well. So I want to say to you, Sylvie, to Karen, to Dawn Somerville, Nazara, Michelle, Salim. We were on the ground, and we were in real time trying to get people patched into neighborhoods to board up businesses. It was crisis management, in real time. And I want to say thank you for standing everything you stood up. We look forward to working with you on this reconstruction through apprenticeship program and pre-apprenticeship programs. And Chairman Squilla, I have to leave now. I'm right across the street. I'm on the phone. I'm in the car. But I just want to put on the record, and I won't be able to stay to hear the response for DHS and the Office of Children and Family Services, is that all we know relative to our economy opening is that we can't reopen without parents being able to have someone to look after their children. And for many parents of young children, this means the child care providers, like I had to do this morning with Langston. I want it on the record. What are we doing to support child care providers during this time where their entire business model has collapsed? And secondly, are we providing guidance to them as they try to safely reopen now that we have entered the yellow phase? And I specifically, Chairman Squilla, want to hear a response to what support services are going to minority and women-owned providers, especially those who are home-based. And Chairman Squilla, members of council, thank you for your patience. And I have to get off now.
Thank you, Councilwoman. You're muted, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilmember Parker. I appreciate your input. Before we go to the other members for council, just a quick question, and we have spoken to this in the past, and I really want to appreciate how fast during the COVID-19 crisis we were able to get up and put some subsidies on the table for some of our small businesses. I know it wasn't for everybody, not everybody was able to get it, but it was something to give people hope and know that the city of Philadelphia is looking out for them, so it's very important. But now that we see the state stepping up and then using some of their COVID dollars for access, and it's going to be done through the state, but I was just, as I spoke to you yesterday, is there a way that we could let our folks know through our Commerce Department, through a link to access this portal for funds that the state will be now distributing through a third party?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Councilman. So that program, we've heard that it'll be, the portal will be opening up at the end of June, and it will be administered through this CDFIs, through our microlenders. And as soon as that becomes available, we will certainly push that out through our newsletter and our social media channels and make sure that you all are aware, and that we'll also send it out to the more than 7,000 business owners that applied to our program recently.
And that's good, too. I think we have a list of businesses. I think, if anything, I know Councilmember Sanchez says this all the time, we have an opportunity to make ourselves better through this and through our contacts, and people have direct access to us, and we could directly try to help them and make this work and make them be able to come back as we now in the yellow phase and hopefully get into the green phase, be able to come back and be productive businesses. So I really appreciate what you have done, and looking forward to these new programs as they come on. Next person, we're going to have Councilmember Sanchez. You have some questions?
Yes, good morning, Sylvie. I want to echo Councilwoman Parker's sentiment. We want to thank you for working with all of our Carters directly and look forward to their feedback in this process. Can you quickly, and if you don't have a quick summary, provide to the chair the $225 million small business relief package from the state? There's $100 million for Main Street, $100 million for historically disadvantaged businesses, and $25 million for loan payment. Proportionally, given the history that we've had with the state, what is your expectation of how much of that money will end up in Philadelphia, and where are some of the priorities you're trying to drive?
So I honestly don't know how much of it will end up in Philadelphia. I've just asked that question this morning in another meeting with PIDC, and they're not really aware either, and they've been more engaged since this will go through the CDFIs. So, I think it's a good thing for sure that there's $100 million set aside for historically disadvantaged communities. And as I get more information, I can certainly send it to the council president, to all of you. So, I don't exactly know. I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question?
No. If you didn't have an idea, you can send it. I think it's incumbent on us to begin to drive that money and prioritize it. One of the good things about what has happened over COVID is that we have strengthened our relationship with the state delegation. And so let us not wait for them to begin to drive that. If there's any recommendations we can make, we should do so. My next thing is, are you familiar with the Section 108 program of the CDBG process?
I am familiar, but Dwayne Bum, my senior deputy, who is, I believe, on this team, is more familiar than I am.
Can anybody from Commerce tell me when's the last time that Commerce has used this loan product?
There he is.
Dwayne, are you available?
Hi, this is Dwayne Bum, Deputy Commerce Director. PIDC uses the HUD 108 program and generally sort of draws it down in tranches of $10 to $20 million. We'll have to get back to you to confirm the last sort of amount of drawdown of that and the status of that balance.
Thank you. In our hearings with Ann Fadula and Rob DeBoe, I have been strongly encouraging the 108 program was used by the Rendell administration to rebuild downtown, and there were a mix of hotels and commercial establishments that were established. And I have been calling on the administration to do something similar, but much, much bolder, and the $500 million. And dedicate that kind of investment to the neighborhoods as we have done downtown. Do you have any perspective on this, given the conditions of our commercial corridors? I specifically asked, and how many of the administration members have walked the corridors? Kensington, that I share with Councilman Squilla, is destroyed. So you have any feelings around the need to do something that big? As much as I appreciate, a couple million here, a couple million there, our neighborhoods are destroyed. A couple million is not going to do anything for those neighborhoods.
Well, I certainly agree that we need to put a lot more investment into the commercial corridors, into our neighborhoods. I would have to become more familiar with the HUD 108 program to really answer that question. I don't know. Karen Bagley is also on. I saw her face popping up on the screen, so I don't know if Karen might have a little additional insight.
Hi, this is Karen Fegley, Deputy Commerce Director. I think it's a great idea, Councilwoman. It's something we should look into. I do know PIDC has used the program in recent years for a few neighborhood projects, I think supermarket projects, but I couldn't put my fingers on them to confirm exactly the names. So we will get back to you with those. But I like the idea of it is a potential source for significant investment. I know one of the states that use it well from it, so an opportunity to take them up on giving a larger proposal. So that's something we should definitely work on.
We will definitely, as we do the surveys, receive the surveys from our corridor folks, really want you to think about if that responding to what they're going to be highlighting as some of the challenges moving forward. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think now we could use this time as an opportunity to look at these hard areas and how we could reimagine and reinvent ourselves. Next question, Councilmember Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Sylvia Gay Howard, for the work you've been doing with the Commerce Department. I know we've had a chance to visit different parts of the city, 52nd Jefferson, other parts of the city, and get a sense of some of the challenges. Has there been any type of assessment from a financial perspective of dollars in reference to what amount of money is needed to try to make that investment in our commercial corridors based on some of the unrest that's happened?
Yeah, I've been asked that question a few times. I don't know the amount of dollars. I know that the number of businesses that filed police reports is close to 1,000, I believe. And it's a combination. It really kind of depends on how you look at it. There's a combination of chain stores and then mom and pop stores. And I think, the program that we'll be setting up will not be for chain stores. It'll really be for smaller businesses. And then, then the question is how much, do they have insurance? How much insurance do they have? How much is covered? Because, some percentage of that damage is covered by insurance. Hopefully. I'm sure some of it is. But we just, we just got outreach. Councilwoman Gim referred an email to me yesterday from a business owner, immigrant business owner, has two businesses, one in West Philly, one in Germantown. And he said he has a small insurance policy, has lost everything for kids. And, I'm not quite sure how much it would take to help him get back, he started again.
So I know you, from my recollection, you're putting together a survey to those businesses and using the various corridor managers and CDCs to get that information. In those surveys, are you also asking for financial information in reference to the amount of damage and what a portion of that damage has been covered by insurance?
The survey does ask questions about broadly around how much they think the damage is and what they know about insurance. I think we don't want to put too much of a burden in terms of getting every single piece of information, but to give us a sense of that information for sure. And then when the businesses do apply, they'll have to give us that information as well.
Is there any type of technical assistance or other initiatives that's going to be put together to help businesses, especially some of our smaller businesses, to navigate the insurance process, either working with organizations or individuals who are public adjusters that could provide maybe some pro bono assistance or just guidance for small business owners, similar to when we were trying to provide help and assistance to businesses trying to navigate the PPP program. Insurance right now is a very challenging issue for a number of small businesses, and are we providing any type of assistance in that regard?
Yeah, so actually one of the things that we've been doing at Commerce since last weekend is organizing volunteers that are getting in touch with us. So it started with volunteers around just boarding up and cleaning, and I'm sure you all saw the incredible number of people that came out. And now we're getting a lot of calls from lawyers and MBA students, all sorts of people that want to offer support, technical assistance, help with going through the insurance claims. So we are kind of gathering that information, and we're working with LISC and PACDC, the Merchants Fund, sort of a number of different partners. Some CDCs have already gone, and like the Enterprise Center has created a resource center. They've actually created a physical center, recovery center. So we're working really closely with our CDCs, since they're the boots on the ground, and they really are, kind of working directly with the businesses.
And is there going to be some effort to capture all that information, put it out through social media, through some type of either campaign or initiative to let people know if you're a small business owner and you have insurance but having challenges navigating or just trying to restart your business, this is where you can go?
I think that's a great idea. We hadn't yet planned that, but I think that's a great idea. So we've just been sort of trying to keep up with everything, but I think that especially once we get this program together, that businesses are going to need a lot of support in navigating their options. Some businesses, honestly, are going to be better off closing down, paying their creditors, closing down, because they'll have a better chance of starting afresh. They just may not be able to open, and some will be able to. So that's a great idea. Be happy to talk about it.
So from commentary I saw at the end of last week, Mayor Kane talked about revisiting the budget from the perspective of police. Has there been any conversations in reference to that same issue from a Commerce dynamic? From my observation, Commerce has been very significantly defunded from general fund dollars, and that the administration is trying to use community development block grant dollars in order to help Commerce to do what they need. But even before the unrest that happened recently, Because of COVID-19, Commerce needed more assistance than ever, and reducing its funds was a concern, considering that we need to grow businesses in the city of Philadelphia. And then when you lay on top of that all of the unrest that has occurred in response to the unfortunate killing of George Floyd, and the impact it's had on businesses, especially small businesses, has there been any conversation about revisiting Commerce's the Commerce budget, especially in reference to general fund dollars for staffing, so we have people that can help small businesses to get reopened? I think Commerce was historically underfunded, and even more so now with these cuts.
So we haven't really discussed replenishing any of the general fund dollars. My understanding, and especially because we work so closely to bring in jobs and revenue, businesses, which brings revenue to the city, that, the situation's really dire in terms of, revenue being down. So we're really focused as much as possible on getting assistance from the COVID dollars, the state, CARES money, now SBA, we're working with the state to get emergency declaration through SBA. So that's kind of what we're pursuing right now.
Okay. Thank you. I believe my time is up. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Green. And also, Sylvie, before we go to the next question, I know the Center City District had did a survey as far as opening. Have they shared their survey with you to help you with any of that information?
I have, yeah. Paul sent me the survey yesterday with the different options around outdoor dining. We've been in regular touch. Thank you.
All right. I mean, that's good too. And then as Councilmember Green has said, I know Councilmember Dom was working with some volunteers and insurance companies to actually do an outreach program to these small businesses. He has a question next, so I'll just lead right into that. Councilmember Dom, you available?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Sylvie, for everything you're doing. So, we did launch an insurance program for small businesses. I invite all my colleagues to be involved with it, and we have people from the insurance industry volunteering their time. The Barristers Association of Philadelphia. Our first launch was in West Philadelphia, but we plan on I've toured a lot of the areas, in the area of like Germantown and Erie had a lot of damage. Germantown Avenue, Councilwoman Sanchez's district, horrible, terrible. Parts of Port Richmond, South Philly, and Center City. But really, this is for the small business owner who doesn't know how to navigate. We have people available. The hotline is 610-304-8529. It's all free. All we want to do is help people make sure they get their proper insurance. And in many cases, they should get reimbursed. A retail store should get reimbursed for their inventory, should get reimbursed providing they have the insurance for their damage to their store. And it's also possible, according to the insurance agents, that they could now start receiving business interruption, which they couldn't get under the coronavirus situation. So in many ways, it's very important for us to tap all those resources first. So here's my question I wanted to ask you, Mr. Rector. I know that your budget, for lack of a better word, was decimated. Okay? And I just want to ask you this question. Are there 3, 4, 5 programs that have tremendous returns? For every dollar we invest, we receive $10 back, that you could outline for us that we should reconsider restoring in the Commerce Department?
Thank you, Councilman. And I do want to just thank you for doing that program with the insurance, in terms of the insurance claims and with the lawyers that are helping out. We did actually share a list of all the corridors with Brian from your staff. So that's great that you guys are doing that. So in terms of programs, I mean, the biggest, what we had to cut, I guess some of the biggest cuts were really to contracts that we had. Graduate Philadelphia, Campus Philly, Citizen Diplomacy International, and Delaware River Waterfront Corporation were sort of larger number of contracts that we had to zero out because of the budget cuts. And certainly all of those organizations do wonderful work and get a great return on their investment. Those were difficult decisions to make, and those are longstanding partners of ours. I think, other than that, I mean, to Councilman Green's point before, there are certain programs where we would love to have more dollars, like the Storefront Improvement Program, which we had to cut some percentage of that. We also had to cut our Safe Cam program and our program that funds our PHL venture program that funds tech startups that are founders from disadvantaged backgrounds. So those are paused. We would hope to bring those back, but those are all programs that have a great impact and return on investment.
So if you could, you don't have to do it right now, just send over to us 3, 4, or 5 different programs that you think we should revisit that might have the highest rate of return for the city. I'd be curious to know what those are to see if there's a possible way to restore some of those things.
Okay, we can do that.
The other comment I just want to make is I just want to make sure that any city dollars, state or federal dollars, before we provide them, we make sure that, like we've exhausted as we spoke earlier, that all insurance was exhausted first. So let's first use insurance as the first line of defense. In my thinking, the second line would be federal, the third line would be state, and the very last line would be the city. So anyway, thank you for everything. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dahm. Councilmember Gauthier? Jamie, you available?
I think she's you're muted, Councilmember.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Sylvie. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I am well. I want to make sure that this economic downturn doesn't lead to long-term loss of Black wealth, business ownership, and property ownership in our city. I'm thinking of corridors like 52nd Street in my district that was, well on its way to becoming a center and really a showpiece for Black ownership, Black entrepreneurship, and a center for Black arts and culture. So we know there are those who see these type of economic downturns as opportunistic chances to buy low from those who might be feeling particularly vulnerable. How does the Commerce Department propose responding to the likely wave of real estate speculation that will occur on commercial corridors that have suffered due to COVID-19 and due to the recent unrest?
We've been thinking about that a lot. I think obviously this is a turning point in terms of really thinking about economic justice and wealth building. So agree with you completely. And actually, ironically, as you know, the Herald's last quarter walk was on 52nd Street. That was the last day before things went crazy, I would say. And we heard a lot about how there were hedge funds buying properties in West Philly, and don't even know who those people are that are buying those properties, but they're sitting on them until they're ready to make money on them, basically, and not for any good use. So we actually have a fund that we put out, and I'll let Karen speak to it more, but for acquisition. And I think we just had $2 million that we just put out recently. And clearly that's not enough, but it's a start. So Karen, do you want to speak a little more to that fund?
Sure. Hi, Councilwoman. So we actually followed lead, and I will say PIDC created a commercial real estate acquisition loan fund as a pilot, and have done a few loans. Most recently, Duafe Hair Care up on a longtime business on North 22nd Street received a loan to buy her building. We wanted to follow suit, recognizing, again, this was a year ago, that how much need there is for sort of local control and building local wealth in this way. So we had put out an RFP to create funds at local CDFIs, and just recently awarded some dollars to WARC, Lynn Cutler at Women's Opportunity Resource Center, as well as, and we are in conversations with another 1 or 2 of the applicants to see if we can create another fund. And we hope to continue to capitalize those funds so that they can make loans to either CDCs or business owners to buy their buildings, with the idea of creating that local wealth and sort of local control to ensure that our commercial corridors represent the communities. But I agree with Sylvie and with all of you, like, this is a call to action that we haven't seen, before, and it's on us all to step up and double down on those efforts, triple down, quadruple down. So appreciate your support.
Thank you. I think it's going to be more important than ever to have almost like a coordinated strategic plan for our neighborhood business corridors to make sure that they're developing in line with what the community, wants and needs. So I look forward to working with you on that.
Sounds great.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, council member. Is there anybody else have any questions for Commerce? Hearing none, Sylvie and team, thank you so much for your testimony and your answering to the questions. I'm sure, as in the past, if anybody has any questions, they could email you. You guys are great at getting back to us and our staff, and we really appreciate that because it's important that every day comes up with a new question that we don't know the answer to, and you guys are there to help us out. So we really do appreciate it. Matt, is everybody ready for the next group of questions?
Thanks, everyone.
I believe so. Is Cynthia Figueroa still on the line?
I am. Can you see and hear me?
could, other than programs that work like Power Corps. And so I just think that, this is just, it's beyond tragic to want to cut a program like Power Corps.
I want to say it's 100% beyond tragic. We had to, and Commissioner Arley can kind of chime in on this, that we have to ensure that we support all the direct funding. Anything we cut in prevention, we'd either be cutting childcare, we'd be cutting after-school programs, we'd be cutting work-ready programs, we'd be cutting juvenile justice diversion programs. So I don't think there's any cuts that DHS could have put forward that would have felt good to anybody. And so one of the ways that we looked at prioritizing was what are the absolute around legislative requirements, and things that we've known and heard from this council body are absolutely. So while other cities completely eliminated their workforce development dollars or didn't run those programs, we maintained those. That's true of our child care.
Well, let me just, I'm just going to cut you off just because I don't have a lot of time. So, but I really want to make the point that this is a mistake. This is a big mistake. And I also want to parlay that into a further conversation because I had with the Commissioner of Parks and Recreation, who apparently hates me so much, for asking her, what is the plan for our youth for the summer? So previously when she was asked, I asked her in the beginning of the budget hearings, what's the plan for youth this summer? There was no plan. There was a plan for play streets, which is for small children. There was a plan for some other activities that were primarily summer camp, which is for smaller children. And then there was a small number of summer jobs relative to the number of young people who need them. And so, I'll ask you what I asked her about the plans and the investment in our young people, because when you see the frustration that people have, this is exactly what people are feeling, that there is not the level of investment in our young people that there should be. And I know that you're working with limited resources. I know that, listen, you're doing the best you can with what you have. But at the same time, I also know that the result in the lack of investment in our young people it's showing, and it's been showing for a very long time. And if we are going to have another long, hot summer, we had a 15-year-old shot and killed, I believe, last night or early this morning. I mean, what is the investment going to be in our young people relative to summer activities, to keeping them safe and productive, and with activities this summer? And what are we going to do about further investment?
So I just want to be really clear. We have not impacted any of those investments, and there is, in fact, a plan. So beginning in July.
What is the plan? I'm asking because the investment.
Sure. So can I walk through the plan, or would you like? Because I don't want to take up all your time.
I just wanted to be clear, only because I don't have a lot of time. But I want to be clear that I'm not talking about summer camps and play streets. Okay, I'm talking about for anybody who's 13 and up who needs something to do this summer. Yes.
So the summer ready, the enrollment of over 7,000 youth is currently under process. There's 3 platforms for them to be virtually online. We're also have been working with Philadelphia Youth Network, who leads that, to make sure that there's a number of in-person opportunities. There's also several hundred positions that are going to be available physically for older youth, about 1,300 of them through the SLIP slots. Those are the state leadership internship programs for 19 to 24-year-olds that are being hired through the Parks and Rec, and that's an investment that we have with Philadelphia Works that we intend to be paying. We're not disinvesting in the youth at all on the older youth side. So we've completely 100% committed to keeping that intact, and we have a very clear plan in place with Philadelphia Youth Network that we can send to you.
Are those investments the same as last year, more than last year, less than last year?
They are the same, with the exception of there was going to be a wage increase. So there was a reduction of $600,000 in the work ready. And that was in order to continue to move the wages higher. So we are still investing the same number of slots for this year as we did last year.
So how can that be? I know, Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time, but I'm just I don't understand that question. How can it be that we've invested less money, but we have the same number of slots?
Because we're going to pay a higher wage. So instead of when we were going into fiscal year 21, we were going to pay the kids slightly more than we paid them last summer. So we're still going to have the same number of kids. They'll be paid at the same amount that they were in the summer of July 2019.
Okay, so we're going to pay them more, so we're going to have less kids?
No. We're going to pay them the same as last year and have the same number of kids. What you were seeing was going to be an expansion in a wage. We're not taking any slots away.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll come back around on the next round for more questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Bass. Next up, we'll have Councilmember Brooks and then Thomas. Then we'll go to the second round. So, Councilmember Brooks.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. My first question is, when you first testified, you noted that there were 11% fewer children in DHS placement now than there were a year ago. And this progress is important, but I'm still wondering how it compares to other cities. So how does our current removal rate compare to the national average and the rates of other cities?
So in terms of our removal rate, DHS is still high, so we still acknowledge that our removal rate is high. However, when we think about the past 3 years, we have been trending in the right direction. So to give you a sense, in 2015, our removal rate was 10.5. That was at the wake of the new legislation that added several child welfare laws. But as of 2018, which is the latest data, is 7.6. When we compare it to other jurisdictions who are like Philadelphia, which would be Baltimore, as well as New York City, Baltimore actually saw an increase from 2015 to 2018. They increased from 6.0 to 8.8, but New York is still decreasing in terms of their removal rate. They went from 2.2 to 2.0. So again, although our removal rate is high compared to other jurisdictions, we believe that we are moving in the right direction when we think about all the strategies we have employed in the past 3 years.
All right. So do we have a goal to bring it down, and what is it?
So we definitely have a goal to continue to reduce our removal rate as well as our placement population. Our PMT team was actually looking at the trends. So going beyond the past 3 years, looking at the trends on the past 5 years, we want to continue to reduce our placement population by another 12% in the next 3 years. So we want to continue to do that. So we're looking at about a 4% reduction each fiscal year.
Thank you, Kimberly. My next question is about homeless youth. What is the number of youth experiencing homelessness that are placed in residential care each year, and what targeted supports are you receiving?
In terms of young people who are homeless, I can't give you the figure in terms of young people who are homeless, but I can give you a sense of the young people who are in placement who has elected to remain in placement so that they won't become homeless. So I can do the reverse. And so when we look at every year, we have about 300 or so young people. Last fiscal year, we had 313 young people. We monitor their outcomes around whether or not they have a permanent living arrangement when they exit our care, whether or not they have a source of income when they exit our care, and whether or not they have a life connection when they exit our care. So when we look at those three metrics, the young people exit our care, what we consider a permanent living arrangement. We say a permanent living arrangement if, in fact, they achieve some sort of permanency. So adoption, PLC, or reunification with their parents, we're at 60% in terms of those young people. It doesn't mean that they cannot remain in their apartment setting. It just means that DHS has not reunified them with their parent, the young person elected to remain in care. When we look at the source of income for that young person, the source of income is about 48%, indicate that they left with a stable source of income. Again, we view that as a good measure in that we encourage our young people to remain in school. So to be in school, most of the time our young people are in school and they only have part-time employment. And in terms of life connections, because we want to make sure that the young people are connected with someone, just in case they fall on hard times when they exit our system, we're also looking at about 60% in terms of life connections.
So to add to that, is there an increase in the number of young people that are entering
into homelessness or residential care settings since the pandemic?
No.
There has not been an increase. I actually sent out, at the start of the pandemic, I actually sent out a directive to DHS staff, our community umbrella agencies, as well as our community-based providers, in that we did not want to discharge any older youth from our system without having a plan. So we developed teaming. So we actually team those young people to make sure that they have a plan before they exit care. So no, we have not discharged young people to homelessness given the pandemic.
Thank you for that. And the other one is, with the anticipated proposed budget cuts, will it affect your ability to be able to serve these young folks that I'm asking about?
No, it won't affect our ability, because as I indicated earlier, we were able to use cost savings as a result of reducing our dependent congregate care placement by 46%. Remember, congregate care placement are the highest cost placements. So we reduced that by 46% on the dependent side and by 72% on the delinquent side. So we were able to give back those cost savings.
Oh, that's good to know. I have one other question. The written testimony that you provided highlights some of these successes of Community Schools Initiative, including an increase in the daily attendance averages, which are critical for student success. So how else are we measuring the success of community schools? And are we bringing these lessons learned from Community Schools Initiatives to other schools around the district in general? And I think my time is almost up, so I just want to get them all on the record. And with no further community schools being added in FY21, how are you all envisioning the long-term impact of this initiative for Philadelphia students? So I fought for on the other side, so I'm very passionate about communities.
Oh, great. So I will definitely get you more detail, because we've been looking at all the different measures that we believe we can work in partnership with the district as it relates to the community schools, in addition to attendance and attachment, and also looking specifically on the high school side, how it links to attendance as a direct correlation with graduation rates. But I will say that we've been looking at the fact that we can't expand in the next year, and how future budgets might look if we end up in a similar place. One of the purposes of bringing the Office of Children and Families together was to leverage resources that we have through DHS that are already involved with the with the school district, and how do we align those resources better? So, for example, Kim Burley and I have been talking about the CUAs, and how do we make sure there's the liaisons within community schools to better create relationships between particular schools and the CUAs in their neighborhoods, and also how do we do the parent cafes and some of the other prevention services included after school programs, but also truancy, because we do a lot of work on the ground with a number of schools. So we hope to leverage what we have in an existing work to continue to support the schools, and I'm happy to work with you on that as we continue to build out that plan.
Yes, please let me know how I can be supportive. Education is one of my passions, and with the CUAs, I used to be a table host too. So bringing a different level.
We're happy to have you, and we will definitely tap on you to support that work. We would love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Brooks. And the community schools, obviously, I guess because of the budget cuts, will not be expanding, but they are looking to expand the following year. Is that correct?
We're on a hold, but our hope is that we resume to some level of normalcy, between the pandemic and our challenges now. So we're not making a commitment right now to a particular number until, we see how 2021 ends up financially.
Okay, great. All right, we have Councilmember Thomas. You available?
Yes, I am. Good morning, almost afternoon. Thank you, Cynthia, for your work in coordinating with your office. I do appreciate the relationship. I think that there are some things that we've been able to work together and do well, but I do think there are a couple areas where we still need some clarity. So I'm going to try to dive into some of those things right now. First thing, you talked about PYN and the reduction that they're taking. So I understand that their young people's wage will stay the same. I'm wondering how many hours per week will young people be permitted to work? Normally it's anywhere from 20 hours a week to about 35 if you're a part of the right program. Are those options still going to be the same, or will there be a reduction in hours for youth working this summer?
So since the first part of the summer until they get the federal okay for the virtual, it's going to be based on a certain amount of engagement. So it's not, for the wages, it's an hourly wage. And this is different because they're not, they won't be at a physical site every day. They'll be virtually logging in. So PIN has laid out a process by which they would have like a total amount per week that they're getting based on meeting certain benchmarks of engagement.
So yes, their hours are going to be reduced.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. That's all right. So I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I don't have that much time. I've got a little limit.
It's a confusing system. It's not there's never an easy.
No, I get it. But either way, it's still going to lead to a reduction in hours. And so, I really want to just go back to what Councilmember Bass talked about, because I'm not going to say you. I'm going to say we. I don't think we are prepared to provide the needs that our young people are essentially going to have this summer. I'll give you another example. I've been talking about sports forever, and I know it's not a priority to everybody, but I understand it's a priority to our young people, and it's a way that they occupy their time in a positive capacity. We're now in the yellow. I've been asking for so long for somebody for the administration to give us specific guidelines as to what young people can do as it relates to sports. We even talked about the idea that baseball and softball would probably have different guidelines than basketball and other things. And so now we're in the yellow. I have a plethora of young people in my DM who are begging me to get in the gym. I have coaches and other organizations across the city who want to do calls because they're trying to plan activities for the summer. We do a big event where we bring professional sports players to the city every year, the Danny Rump Classic. Everybody's in limbo right now. The entire sports community is in limbo. And what makes it even worse is that we now see professional sports starting, and that kind of gives the indirect message that young people too can participate in athletics. So I'm hoping that we can, as soon as possible, somehow have a conversation with the health department or whoever we need to, so we can communicate to the public clear guidelines on what young people can and can't do, so we can keep them safe as well as keep their time occupied and give these adults, coaches, and mentors the guidelines they need to provide and work with us to make sure that young people have quality activity in the summertime. Moving on to the next thing dealing with young people. And I'm sorry, I have limited amount of time. I am very concerned about some of the activity and unrest that we've seen last week, right? So I'm thinking specifically about the young person who might be a good child, right? Who maybe stepped into a situation that's a little different than what they normally do, and now they have some goods or some finances that they acquired that wasn't necessarily the legal way. Has there been any conversation specifically looking at the young people who have been robbed, who might have got the stuff illegal, but now have been robbed, harassed, or had some type of physical damage done to them, but they're scared to report it because they know that the way that they got whatever it is that was taken from them was not in the ideal space. We've seen crime and murder go up significantly during the pandemic, but even more last week. And while young people might not have made the best decision, I still think it's our responsibility to provide safe havens for no matter what they're going through. So I know that's a loaded question. If you could just try to keep the answer very limited, because I actually have one more, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it to a second round.
So I will just say that I know Kim can chime in that we've been working very closely with the DA and the courts, et cetera, and through this unrest, I think we've been incredibly pleased to see that our population did not skyrocket. We have continued to be challenged by having kids who have gotten arrested for very serious crimes, but the police department is following suit in terms of just trying to use diversion. Kim, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
No, I think that your answer was sufficient in terms of us holding steady at the our detention center, the PJJSC. I'm going to be honest, we were pretty nervous with the unrest and certainly wanted to make sure that the young people who were being held in detention were young people who needed to be there and not young people who could be discharged to community-based options. So we did not see an increase in our PJJSC population as a result of the unrest.
And so no disrespect, but we just talked to the district attorney the other day, and we know that the arrest rate right now on crime is extremely low, right? And so because the arrest rate is low, that means that the young people that you're talking about specifically, right, where you're not seeing the increase, that means that that's because nobody was arrested. So what I'm saying is this, right? I'm thinking specifically about the young person who because in order for somebody to be arrested, somebody had to call 911 and communicate the crime. What I'm saying to you is that we have a large demographic of young people who they're not calling 911 because the way that they got what they got wasn't legal. So if I got something illegally, right, I'm not going to call 911 when someone then does something to me to take what I got illegally. So what I'm saying is this: we're in the middle of an issue right now where young people have committed negative activities and it's turning into a ripple effect and they don't want to report it. I'm communicating a demographic that I know we have to think about. And I know that you didn't directly create this problem, but we have to directly think about that demographic and figure out what can we do to try to support them. I know my time is up. I really need you to, and we could archive that and maybe get a written response. I really need somebody just to talk to me about housing in the city of Philadelphia, and specifically the impact between housing and placement. I'm told that the majority of young people who are in placement because of DHS is because of a housing issue, because their parents can't get into the space of adequate housing for them to be able to get their child back. I'm wondering how much truth it is to that, and what would you recommend that, if there is truth to it, what do you recommend that we on council do in the world of housing to address this issue of placement? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your time, Cynthia.
Thank you, council member.
Thank you, Councilmember Thomas. Also, I just saw an article. I just sent it over to you. Montgomery County OK's youth baseball, softball practices. So there is a way, if people are creative enough to figure this out and look at safe ways to get people active again. And maybe that's something we as council will get together with the administration to find ways to do that.
I did want to say that the yellow phase right now does not allow sports, but it does allow that childcare and summer camps that were referenced. And so in support of our health department and the great work they've been doing, they really prioritized guidance for childcare, which you could imagine was incredibly extensive and involved. And then the next, they moved on to summer camps. So Councilman Thomas, I hear you loud and clear. I'm going to ask that we prioritize and escalate the need for youth sports, because we know that's so critical for so many of our young people this summer.
Mr. Chairman, just a point for clarity real quick. First of all, thank you for the article. But secondly, I can confirm that most of the sports community in the city of Philadelphia does not know that sports is not permitted right now. And that's why that's why I said we need clear cut guidelines and communication.
Contact sports, yes.
And when people can start. People are playing sports. They are. They were yesterday. They are today. And coaches just aren't clear. If they know exactly when they can start and what those guidelines are, folks will delay. But we're not giving them clear communication. I'll stop right there. I know my time is up. Thank you.
I hear you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I think that's why we need to have those guidelines in place, because people are going to do it without the guidelines. So why not put them in place now and make them do it properly? So, good points. Thank you very much. I know once we were going to go second round, but Councilman O popped in there. Councilman O, you have a question?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I was trying to not ask a question as much as I could, but here I am. Because I just would like to know from anyone, Deputy Mayor, Commissioner, could you explain briefly, because I know we have short time, exactly how is the city responding to the Family First Transition Act and the Family First Act? Like what is happening? I know there's a waiver from the state, but how does it affect our city and our funding and like the things we're doing now? What are we supposed to be doing, and how is it impacting us?
So I'll talk about the mechanics in terms of how we're working with the state, and Kim can talk about how we've been preparing locally in Philadelphia. So it is a federal legislation, and a state can opt in. Our state has decided to delay it One of the determinations about delaying it is in order to benefit from some of the resources is that there has to be evidence-based practices that are utilized on the prevention. So they will only reimburse particular kinds of programs, and in child welfare there is not a large number of evidence-based programs, and so we've been working to support how we build that up in Philadelphia, and Kimberly can talk about it, but we sit on probably too many committees and too many task force at the state level, and I would say that Philadelphia has been actually applying a lot of pressure on the state in regards to Families First. So I appreciate that you bring this up, because I think it could ultimately be a huge benefit because it emphasizes prevention over placement. So Kim, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
So what I will add is just to indicate that Philadelphia County will begin Family First implementation on July 1st of 2021. As Cynthia indicated, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania elected to opt into Family First. We were supposed to start this October, however, it has been delayed to July 1st, 2021. We view that delay as just us being able to continue to get ourselves ready. How we got ourselves ready and are getting ourselves ready for Family First is, number one, all the discussion I had earlier about right-sizing the system. The federal government pays for placement. However, Family First allows them to pay for prevention services. So, of course, we want young people to remain in their homes. So this is one of the reasons why we believe it's advantageous in order to opt into Family First, because more money, more federal funding will go through prevention. The other thing that we did was we actually contracted with a research firm, because we wanted to determine what of our existing in-home services that we provided to families, if we could make them evidence-based. So the researcher is actually currently doing that, looking at an array of our services so that we can rise them to the level of evidence-based. But they're also going to give us recommendation around what practice model currently exists in the country that Philadelphia can adopt. Again, because the money will only be reimbursed if it is an evidence-based programming. So our work around right-sizing the system, decreasing our congregate care population. Again, those are our highest paid rates, focusing on family and kinship care, and also focusing on in-home services is how we are preparing for Family First.
Thank you. A question that I really don't understand is that I know Pennsylvania did not kind of waive for now, and you're doing this to get ready. But under the Family First Transition Act, with the $500 million available to help counties transition, are we precluded from any of that money because of the state?
That's correct. So we can only get the transition money once you've opted in and the timeline begins. So, for example, New York State opted in, and New York City, I believe, got 20 million of the 500. So, but we hope that when we opt in, that the state will get transition dollars, and certainly we would want to leverage to make sure that Philadelphia is going to get as much of the transition money as possible.
Okay, thank you. I just read that New York, and I'm not saying that this is correct, I read in the article that New York City was expecting $40 to $50 million based on, so it just seemed like, something that must be done. And if the state is not opting in, our city and county, we're losing the money that could have reimbursed and paid for our transition.
So we were fortunate that we sat at the tables with some of the federal and asked, actually, could a county opt in before a state? And unfortunately, it was determined across the nation that you could only opt in once the state decides first.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman L. Councilmember Sanchez, are you still there for the second round?
Yes, but I'll be brief. I know that we're on a time clock, and I think we have one more department. Do we, Councilman?
No, we could ask both questions for DHS and Office of Children and Families. Either
okay. Okay, no, I was under the impression we had someone else. So again, ladies, thanks a whole lot. One of the things that I am excited about, and I know in all of this doom and gloom, it's hard to kind of talk through some of the things that are happening. So, post this COVID, I'm really interested in, and Cynthia, if you can quickly, Deputy Mayor, quickly kind of, what are the articulated goals around the 0 to 16 continuum as you look to align preschool and some of the education part of your portfolio? One or two or three things that you can quickly articulate that you want to work on.
So I don't think any of these are huge surprises, but in the early continuum is that, all kids are healthy and ready to enter school. So that really targets the 0 to 5, that the school age population, that the youth have the supports and services that they need to be successful in school. For high school kids, we want to make sure that we're targeting keeping on track for graduation and easy and direct access to post-secondary. And with, I think we lose our eye on the prize in the 0 to 16, knowing that post-secondary needs to lead to vocational tech or state stability and sustainable wages for families. And for me, I've been thinking about this continuum of kids, but that it has to be it has to be held up by their families. So if we're talking about kids being healthy and ready to learn when they enter school, we know that that is a significant investments in their families and how we align the supports and work that we're doing around that. So those are some quick ways that we've been thinking about it around milestones that I've been talking about. Every youth and family deserves to reach milestones in their lives. And our goal as government and the public and private sector is to make sure that we're helping families move their children through those milestones successfully, and that we're holding up those kids and their families.
So one of the things that is, again, a positive step, and with all of that's been going on, we haven't paid as much attention, is the new way that the school district will be receiving, trauma and mental health supports and interventions at the school-based level. Can you tell me what role your portfolio has played in that decision-making and its rollout?
Well, we've been a partner in terms of supporting in the work that David Jones and CBH has done. I think one of the things we've talked about before is that not everybody sees behind the scenes the way in which DHS partners very closely with community behavioral health, but certainly our intent is to support both at this community school level, but at the district level, supports that they need to make sure that they're, but I know that partnership with the district has been going well in terms of that's a huge initiative and a completely different way of delivering services within the school district. So we've been trying to focus on making sure that resources that we support on the front end that are not behavioral health, but might be behavior related, so that a kid that might be acting out in class, et cetera, targeting resources and supports on the DHS side to support, so that it's not only kids that have billable services, because we recognize that not all the services that are needed in schools are for kids who fall into a particular diagnosis or a particular behavioral health service.
So one of my concerns as we rolled this out, and we've talked about this over and over, we have many different systems all providing intervention to families, and I know people have choice, so I am still very, very concerned how 3 providers can be in a household. And to highlight and amplify what Council Member Isaiah Thomas said, you could have $100,000 in intervention in a family and they just got a leaky roof. Somebody better fix the leaky roof. So what, if anything, with, because you're on the board of CBH and others, what are we doing to make sure that as we are strengthening the services, we're also leveraging them and making sure that this is not just about billable hours in a very expensive system, but we are investing in the family, not just the program?
So I'm going to ask him to, so just by the way the bylaws are set up, I actually am no longer on the CBH board. It's actually Kimberly Ali serving as the commissioner of DHS is on the board of CBH. But that, I think you bring up an excellent point, and part of the work of the cabinet is to look at this exact issue. We wanted to move this model in the CUA system in terms of one case manager for one family, but we still know that there's a dynamic if you have child welfare, behavioral health, and other systems involved, that it could be numerous providers. So I still think this is something that needs our attention and our priority. And Kim, maybe you can talk a little bit about how you guys are coordinating around CBH.
So I would talk about, in terms of CBH, we recognize that they are the expert in terms of behavioral health, and that DHS, of course, is the expert as it relates to child welfare. Again, the work that we are doing on the front end around diverting families is just that. When we recognize that a family should be served from one of our partners, for example, behavioral health, and we get them to the table. If they need concrete goods because there is not billable hours for CBH to pay for those, then DHS will pay for them. So we do have a carve out in terms of assisting families with prevention dollars in order to prevent the removal of a young person from their home or to reunify. And then when we look at the carve out, about 50% of those children who received those services, it is about 300 children who received them last fiscal year, 50% went to housing. So went to housing needs, whether that is rental assistance, whether that is utility assistance, whether that was some repair work that they needed in their home. And then the other 50% is used for concrete goods. And those concrete goods tend to be beds, for example, dressers, living room sets or dining room sets, again, because we do not want young people to remain in the child welfare system when we can provide them the service that they need. They are families who need support as opposed to formal child welfare. So we work with CBH in order to identify, we're both in the home, we work with CBH to identify those families.
Thank you. And then finally, Deputy Mayor Figueroa, you are one of the conveners or facilitators of this new reconciliation effort that the mayor is putting together. Can you speak to me very briefly, 1, 2, 3, what are the goals that you foresee in this process?
So I'm working with 2 other cabinet members, so Marcel Pratt, the city solicitor, and also Nefertiri Seekout, who is the head of diversity and inclusion for the city. And the initial start was really to get the steering committee, or at least those who've been identified to date, to help us think through both short and long-term action. One of the best pieces, there are a lot of great voices, is some of our own employees, but also the community at large. So the initial was that there's immediate requests to look at bold positions to take that address poverty and address policing. And so that particularly there's Councilwoman Brooks has been part of the police reform coalition that has been talking to both members of the steering committee as well as members of this administration in terms of how we need to move quickly on some action, but also how do we have much longer conversations based on some of the things that were at the top of this hearing, which is the number of youth who are living in poverty, how we're looking at milestones in children and families' lives, and how are we holding folks up. So there's a lot of folks who are interested in the long term, but I think everybody has agreed that there's some immediate short-term action that the city needs to take into consideration. And so that's a little bit of what's been happening right now. We've only had a few conversations and meetings, so we're hoping that there'll be more detail that the steering committee and other members of the administration will be sharing in the short term soon.
So I've called our budget our moral document. The mayor last week said that he was even going to revisit his post-COVID budget in light of what's happened over the last week. What, if any, conversations you've been a part of as it relates to your current budget? I'm making a personal request that the administration not just expect council to do all the heavy lifting. I'm really hopeful that over the next week, department by department, all of you come back and really give us a sense of how you have realigned your budgets to make some of those investments so that we just don't tell people we heard them, but we show them.
Yes, and definitely the budget has been, I failed to mention that in terms of some of the short-term immediate action. The budget itself, and that while there's difficult challenges, just making sure that we support and reflect on whether or not we're making the changes or cuts in places, and how that impacts citizens and our constituents and residents in Philadelphia.
Well, and that's why, again, I want to reemphasize what, our Chairwoman Bass and Councilmember Thomas is saying. What we do this summer, we are in the midst of summer. And what we do over the next few weeks, I can tell you that my parks have been off the chain and weekends with unstructured activities that have required, again, shamefully, police response to it. So we need some messaging very, very quickly about what are allowable activities, encouraged, supported, and financed. As he said, those tournaments, those activities. One of the things that the mayor's initial budget did, and the second budget did, was eliminate the City Council Philadelphia Activity Fund, where I sponsor 180 groups who do summer events and different types of activities. So again, council is not shy about reprioritizing, but I think if the administration is saying, we heard you, then a lot of those items need to be restored, rethought, reimagined, before we finish this budget process. And again, I haven't seen it yet. The mayor said it last Thursday. I hope that over the next week, we actually get to see it.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Sanchez. We do have one more question. Councilmember Kim?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and my apologies for coming in a little bit later on the conversation. But I wanted to say good morning still to Deputy Mayor Figueroa and to Commissioner Ali. So I think, I wanted to follow up, and I apologize if other people have weighed in on this, but I did want to follow up with a little bit of what Councilmember Parker wanted to ask about what is happening with pre-K in our city and sort of the decimation of, some very important neighborhood-owned, female-owned, Black-owned businesses in communities, but also doing essential services too. So do you know what is the current slot allocation and usage for Philly pre-K, and will those slot levels remain for next year?
So the budget proposal that was submitted in terms of the reductions took away our expansion. So we were funded in this current fiscal year at 3,300 seats, and our proposal that we submitted remains level at 3,300 seats. Child care centers, as you know, were closed during that time, including a number of the ones that we fund. But we did support and maintain a lot of advocacy with a lot of our friends in the advocacy arena to ensure that we could continue to pay providers for their work so that, just as you said, they wouldn't be decimated. One of the greatest challenges is while the public sector agreed to continue to provide that payment, a lot of sites are mixed sites in the sense that they're also private pay. So definitely folks lost income on the private pay side of the house, but we've definitely made the commitment to continue to pay the providers who were in our network. And then Octal at the state also continued to pay their providers in regards to those subsidies. And so our intent certainly is to, and our goal for that was to try to keep all of those institutions or providers intact, because they're a lifeline to Philadelphia citizens, but they're also majority minority women-owned businesses. So the majority of the sites that we invest in are minority women business-owned, and that's why one, we need it as a resource and safety net for our families, but also a commitment to supporting small business owners.
Now, do you know how many centers currently serve essential workers, and are they getting any additional funding, those facilities?
So the first part of the question, I can say that we currently have about 39 in Philadelphia that are operating just over 2,000 seats that are supporting essential workers. The yellow phase allows us to continue to reopen those sites. And I will say that I want a huge thanks to the health department. They've done really a tremendous job in giving us the amount of guidance that is necessary, because still, while it's opening, it's limited to a certain number of kids per classroom, and trying to maintain the same teachers, et cetera, with the same cohort of kids. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm sorry, will you repeat the second part of your question? It was...
Well, are those facilities getting any additional funding?
So I can get back to you on that. I don't believe that there is an incentive pay for those who are doing the essential.
Okay. I mean, as we start to phase in the reopening of the city, our hope is that certainly through the COVID crisis, we really wanted to prioritize supports for the essential workers because it's been so important. Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.
The one other question. So, in terms of Head Start, do we know whether we are at full capacity for Head Start, and whether the city has partnered with the school district to ensure, where are we with Head Start?
So I'm not sure if Sean Perkins, who runs early childhood, is on. I know we've been talking to them and partnering with them. The school district has been very much on top of what's needed as it relates to Head Start, because they're treating the Head Start classrooms very similar to that of the school-based classrooms, which is that they're not opening until we're in a green. So Sean, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about the partnership side.
Yeah, so we've been working with the State Department for their federal allocation, as well as the School District of Philadelphia. I can share here that the School District of Philadelphia had their conversation with the federal government to get their reallocation. They were going to keep their Head Start funding at the same level. And I think that was at 1,500 seats for 4 and 5 year old or 3 to 5 year olds. They did not receive that in writing, but they had the phone call with the federal government, like I said, on Friday, where they were given a congratulations, but they're still waiting for the letter in the mail.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, in part, one of the things that I was wondering if the city can do while we're in different phases and not fully open is whether we're taking a look at shortages of pre-K or Head Start in certain sections of the city, and whether we're doing kind of an equity analysis in terms of access to early childhood. So what stage of things are you on some of that?
Yeah, we work in great collaboration with the school district to strategize on where we do put those seats. I'll say that, this is the 4th year of entering the PHL pre-K program, and maybe in years 1 and 2 that wasn't done as strongly, but I can say that for year 4, the allocation of seats is being done in partnership with the school district and with Ocdel to put them in places and spaces across the city that most need them, and that we're not duplicating, that those places that have some vacancies, we are not putting additional seats or reallocating any seats.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. That's very helpful. Deputy Mayor Figueroa, I'm sure we'll follow up a little bit later. I feel like we can talk a little bit more. There are some questions I had about truancy and just, we have had such a disjointed school year. And of course, with the district being online and really struggling with it, I worry about young people, breaking away from systems, and whether we start the school year with, a more aggressive approach around how to talk about truancy a little bit better, so that we're really thoughtful about ways to, bring people in and making sure that we're taking a look at the truancy rates and practices. We've had a lot of engagement and interest on that level, but we can talk about those things a little bit later. But I think that's something that we can start. Is that something you're open to talking about this summer?
Yeah, I mean, I would be happy to talk. I will just say that we have been very engaged with the school district around the conversation of youth who've been difficult to engage during this current time of being online. And so we've repurposed some of the staff who were working in truancy to try to help and actually knock on doors and visit with family around supporting the online. We actually had them similar to our DHS social workers doing visits as necessary. So just want to let you know that that partnership was happening with the district, and we really have. So we should sit down offline because it's extensive, but we've really re-envisioned how we support the district on the truancy work very much further upstream. And we're actually seeing a significant reduction in the referral of truancy into the regional court.
Great. And my only last statement is, as you're working on your very important role on the conciliation task force, our hope is that we can also make sure that some of the warped approaches around policing that we have seen people come out to oppose, we also see in our public schools. So we have 1/3 more police officers than we do counselors in our public schools, almost 400 police officers compared to 280 some counselors. And so we really want to alter that scenario. So far, the city has been a great partner with it, including CBH and others partnering to get social workers into our schools, to do the STEP programs and to help reimagine. But I do think that the frustration and anger that has been seen on our streets around policing is also very prevalent in the school to prison pipeline that starts with like metal detectors from the moment you walk in, surveillance cameras, security officers, and policing over counseling and the mental health supports that we've heard time and time again from our young people. So I'll look forward to, if there's ways that can be engaged with, but I think it's an important aspect of anything that relates to the policing work as well.
And I just want to say that I think we have tremendous opportunity with Dr. Height's commitment, but also his bringing on Chief Kevin Bethel, he was a special advisor and heading up the public safety at the school district. He was the architect of the diversion program where we worked in partnership with DHS, the police department, district attorney to make sure we stopped arresting youth in schools for minor offenses and actually moving them into a diversionary program through funding that Commissioner Ali supports through the juvenile justice program. So just to say, I think that we have a great asset in Chief Bethel and Dr. Height in our willingness to think, I think, more globally around youth engagement with law enforcement, both in and out of school.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Council Member Jim. I think that's it for the questions. I want to thank Cynthia, you and Kim for answering all these questions, and again, your accessibility for email. I know if we have more questions, we'll be reaching out directly to you. So thank you for all your help here, and looking forward to continue working together. The committee will stand in recess until 3 p.m. on Teams for public testimony. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. All right. Thank you.